think we've always tried to write music that is honest, and most of the songs are written from real life experience. So, they come from an honest place, and I think that has been for some time now the story that we hear back from people, that these songs about the lives of the people who've written them hit them in a way they can apply to certain episodes in their life. And that, to be honest, that's the way that music has always helped me. The records that I really are drawn to at a particular time are providing a commentary to what's going on in my head at that point, but they do it more eloquently than I'm able to. And hopefully our music can work in the same way. It's certainly the aim, I think, for any artist when you're writing music.
My name is Victor Kidson, and together with Bejbi.se, we're in Stockholm. With me, I have Tony and Jono from Above and Beyond. How
Hello.
are you guys doing today?
Good, thank you.
Good, thanks, yeah.
On my way to this interview, I actually drove through a city called Linköping, where I saw you guys play like 11 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of my strongest Above and Beyond memories. Obviously the music, but also afterwards, I brought some vinyls that I wanted you guys to sign for me, and we had a little chat, and your first reaction to the vinyls was, wow, you buy our music. That's so cool. And that kind of shows me what kind of guys you guys are. How does it feel to have such a strong fan base?
It's been great, actually. We have grown it so slowly and so organically. It's amazing how big it's got. I think that's the thing that's incredible, because when we played in Linköping, we were still releasing vinyl. It was still kind of fairly early days. And I think we had an opportunity of knowing a lot of our fans. We ran our own forum at andjunabeats.com. So a lot of the people that came to the gigs would be posting on the forum, and we got to know a lot of those guys individually at the beginning. But obviously it's got much bigger now, and through Twitter and Facebook, the connection is still there. But I think for us, everything that we do is aimed at our fan base. We call them the Anjuna family, and I think that focus has been there right from the start. And obviously you, by coming to the gig and buying the record, you were part of the family from the beginning.
If we look at, what you do musically, you produce music, but what you really do, like for us, is that you transfer emotions. Like you give us emotions that you share with everyone. How do you look at your productions with the reactions that you get from other people?
Yeah, I think it's almost a lucky symptom of what we do that these things happen. It's like even when we're coming around to sort of naming the album, we're not sort of thinking about what effect it will have on people at that point. We're, trying to pick a track that captures, from the palette that we've got already, captures the emotion of the album. So it's not so much a conscious decision to make something that's going to make people feel a certain way, rather than, we do this music and this stuff happens afterwards, which is kind of exciting in a way.
Yeah, because I was going to ask you, when you're in the studio, you're pretty isolated. So who is your audience at that point? Who are you making music for? We're making music for ourselves at that point. And, when you start producing the kind of mix of it, you start to think about, the arrangement in terms of how it might work. And at that point, you're maybe thinking more about the audience at that point. But when we're writing, we're not really thinking about the audience at that sort of genesis of the idea stage, really, are we?
No, I think you make music that you like, and
hope that other people like it.
Other people like
Luckily
it.
It works, right?
Yeah, I think that's the joy of the position that we're in. We've discovered that we are able to make music which makes us happy, that makes other people happy too, and that's fantastic. That's really what you want as a musician, I guess.
Do you ever feel pressure from fans or from other people on what you're going to produce next?
Yeah, definitely, man. I think, you switch on the internet, so to speak. It's always on, isn't it? But, you go online and you can see, what people want you to do. And sometimes what people want you to do is not necessarily what you're feeling like you want to do. So There is that kind of pressure sometimes, but I think, you know, we've always stuck to our guns and kind of done what we felt was right at the time, rather than sort of, you know, meeting the market or meeting what one fan in Venezuela wants us to write or whatever, you know. It just doesn't work like that. You get in the studio, you get a groove together, or you get some, you know, a song or some chords, and, you know, it flows, and if it doesn't flow, you won't finish the track. So it's just got to be whatever you feel is right, I think.
And I think the great thing about the internet is that everybody has a voice now, and so actually if you look at all the tweets and look at all the Facebook posts, there's not one clear direction that people want us to go in, you know. So you have to really figure out what it is that you want to do from the music and where you want to be. Otherwise, you know, I think if you tried slavishly to follow a particular direction that people wanted you to go in, you'd get lost, because there isn't one single answer to that, you know?
And I think it's also the fact that human beings, we're all pretty similar in many ways. So the chances are, if you like something, if you're experiencing something and you put that into music, someone else will understand that. You know, if you look at it from that perspective, if you put yourself into it, the chances are someone else is going to relate to it, and that's kind of the way we view it, I think.
How do you view the balance of producing what you want to produce compared to producing what you think will sell, sort of?
I mean, again, it's, you know, we could have made an album of stuff that we thought might sell, but I think that's, I don't know if we could actually. It might be really hard to do that. I don't know, it's an interesting one. I think because we don't have a major label backing us, we've kind of got a lot of freedom, and that itself creates its own problems, actually, because you've got a completely blank canvas, whereas, you know, often if you're signed to a major label, you've got someone shouting in your ear saying, you know, listen to this record, you should make something like that, and we don't have that. So it's really, it's an interesting question, but I don't know quite how to answer it, really.
I don't either.
Yeah. If we look at We Are All We Need, the album is full of personal stories from all three of you guys. Which is the most personal track on the album, would you say?
I hate this question, because I think songs that you write, they're a little bit like children. You know, you can't really have a favourite child. There are some things on there that have resonance for all three of us, like you say, and I think the great thing about putting music out is that once it's released, and it is now out, it's been out for a few days, so we no longer own it, and the relationships that our fans form with those songs, I'd like that to happen spontaneously without really us telling them too much about it right now. And I like the interpretations that people put on the music. Sometimes they sort of slightly bend the meaning of the story to fit their life, and that's great, because I do the same thing when I'm listening to music too.
Yeah, it's like the track Little Something. I saw someone on our web forum saying that they were really upset that it was about a baby and not about a lover or something like this, and I was thinking, that does it matter, you know, because a lot of the songs can be multi-layered anyway, like Tony says.
I met a girl a couple of months ago, so I kept listening to the track We Are All We Need, because that was perfect for me.
Yeah.
Now, it didn't really work out with me and her, so now I listen to Peace of Mind instead, where I left my heart on a lonely avenue. Mm-hmm. The album really covers a lot of different emotions. Was that your idea from the beginning as well?
I think when we put together an album, one of the things we look for is to, like, you know, going back to your question about do you make music to meet the market, or do you know, how do you balance those things? I think it's one of those things where when you're making an album, you don't want 10 tracks that all kind of sound the same, and you don't, you know, therefore you don't want maybe always, I mean, you could do it, but generally in our albums we don't go for like 10 sad songs, or, you know, there's a kind of different palette of moods, and we look to sort of fill those different spaces so that the album goes on a journey, and I think that's what you're talking about there with Peace of Mind, is, you know, a more uplifting, optimistic take on it.
Were you aware of how people would take the album so close to their own hearts?
I think we've always tried to write music that is honest, and most of the songs are written from real life experience. So, you know, they come from an honest place, and I think that has been for some time now the story that we hear back from people, that these songs about the lives of the people who've written them hit them in a way and they can apply to certain episodes in their life. And that, to be honest, that's the way that music has always helped me. The records that I really are drawn to at a particular time are providing a commentary to what's going on in my head at that point, but they do it more eloquently than I'm able to. and hopefully our music can work in the same way. It's certainly the aim, I think, for any artist when you're writing music, is that you make that connection with people, that you have this idea in your head and it comes out in this musical form, but then it forms a similar idea that you were thinking in somebody else's head. I think that's a lovely thing about it.
Yeah, because looking at the cover of the album, we have people, we have fans, and then with the stories of the album, we have something that people can connect with. So in a way, on this side of the music business, it feels like you did it like together or with people, sort of, or for people or something like that. So it's a very personal album. How much of yourselves do you put into the tracks? We talked about some personal stories that like you take from what you have experienced too as well, right?
I think we put all of ourselves in them. I mean, I think music comes from a very personal place, whether it's a musical idea that is, you know, reflecting something that's going on in your mind and your emotions, or it's based on something that's happened or that's something that might happen. I mean, there's music that's written for specific occasions in people's lives in the band, you know, that's a first, I think. But all the stories the lyrical stories are from our lives, so we do put ourselves out there for people in that way.
If we look at the opening track, Quieter is Louder, that sort of sets the standard for your music right now, because we live in a world where dance music is very, very loud. And then you come with the smoothest, warmest sound that we haven't heard in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of our philosophy really when it comes to dynamics. I mean, it's kind of there's a studio angle to that, and there's also a kind of philosophical angle to that. But, you know, even a track like Hello, the reason that track works well for us when we play it out is because it goes so quiet, you know, and then it gets very loud again. And, you know, it's fascinating to me to see how a lot of producers often throw away the tool of volume, you know, because, you know, silence is actually really powerful in music, and, you know, bringing stuff really, really quiet and then making it explode. I've lost count of the amount of, you know, a lot of my friends going to their studio and they're, you know, talking about getting this track really loud, and that seems to be the focus more than the music. And, you know, dynamics are really important, you know, in music, and there's no need for everything to be flatlined from start to finish. I mean, there's definitely a place for being loud in music, but it wouldn't be loud if you didn't have the quiet bits as well, you know.
I know you guys, when you start producing, you start also on acoustic versions, right? Like that's how you
Sometimes.
get into the...
For songs, that's generally how we write the songs, yeah.
Does that mean that the acoustic version of We're All We Need is already finished, or how does that work?
Well, actually, that one started with some chords that were played in Logic and stuff. I mean, it was kind of an acoustic vibe to it, though, actually. But so I don't know about that one, really. I mean, I'm sure we can do a nice acoustic version of it.
You guys you still are, obviously, but you were playing in bands. You were real musicians before you guys created Above and Beyond. What did your music sound like before?
Well, he's still in the band now. He's still gigging.
Oh, you're still in the band?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
He does gigs on the side.
The band's called Sad Lovers and Giants. They've been together for ages. They were formed before I joined them. And after, I don't know, I think we split up like 20 years ago, but for the last 10 years we've been doing 4 or 5 gigs a year, mostly to people who remember us from back then, but actually some new fans as well. And it sounds like English 80s kind of slightly pretentious rock. With some great guitar playing.
It takes the pretension out of it when you say that.
And what did your sound like?
Well, for me, I mean, I was in like, you know, teenage rock bands and that sort of thing. I mean, I'd never had any success in the band world at all before, you know, doing Above and Beyond and doing I did some remixes solo as well, and started with Parvo at university as well. So, you know, I've always played the piano, I've always played the guitar a little bit as well. So it's just been something I've done rather than kind of gone out and done loads of gigs. I have done a few, but, you know, not so much as Tony.
When did you feel the hunger to start creating music in the electronic way?
For me, it started the first time I went clubbing, because I've been in bands for a long time. Me and my brother were in a band together, and then he introduced me to dance music again in 1995, and I started going out with him every week, and both of us started buying some, you know, like sampler and computer and sequencer, and started trying to make music a little bit like the music that we were hearing in clubs. But the thing that was incredible about that time was that I think the music that I liked before I heard trance music was emotionally very similar. I think the stuff that Sad Lovers and Giants does and stuff that Above and Beyond does in a spiritual way is quite similar. So we were putting the skills that we'd honed by being in the kind of bands that we used to be in into making that music. And I think for me, the early days of our trance productions were just trying to make music that sounded a little bit like what we'd known, but in this new form, because certainly for me, I was going out every week with Liam, my brother, and going back to his house and producing afterwards. It was a continuation of that experience of hearing this stuff and then trying to just make the night last a bit longer by making it at the end of it. So it was just a bit of fun at the beginning, but it was certainly very enjoyable. I remember that.
Do you remember when you felt it?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there were a couple of different stages, really. When I was a kid, I used to play the piano at a really young age, and at the same time, I heard music by people like Jean-Michel Jarre and the Pet Shop Boys, New Order, all of those kind of 80s synth pop things, and Jean-Michel Jarre at the same time, you know, all the music my parents were listening to, my older brother and sister. So, but the thing that I loved was keyboards. I was always into synthesizers and stuff, and always wanted one. And as soon as I could afford to buy one, I bought this little thing. And you know, then I got a Commodore Amiga computer and started making music with 4 channels of samples on that, and gradually built up a studio from there. But it was always a fascination with, you know, the fact that you could make a record and play everything yourself. You know, you didn't have to rely on... I'd done the band thing, you know, as well at this point in my late teens. I'd already been in bands, and it was great to come home and just write the music I wanted to write, and just focus on that and, you know, develop a whole track from start to finish. And now what you can do, when I look back, you know, what people have access to now compared to what I had when I was a teenager is incredible, because I remember adding up the number of notes of polyphony I had between all my synthesizers, which was probably about 30 at the time, 30 notes of polyphony, not 30 synthesizers. And then now, you know, you can just have so many plugins on the computer, and it creates an interesting problem in a way, because I feel like when I had those toys at the start, I would learn each individual toy as I could afford to buy one. Whereas now, a lot of kids would download a load of pirate software, have every single option available to them. And actually, you know, too much choice isn't always a good thing. Sometimes to have a limited palette makes you more creative. And, you know, we still go through that in the studio now. We have so many plugins, and Paavo said to me the other day, do we need all these? Can we turn some of them off? And I was thinking, you know, they're quite handy.
If we look at before the acoustic album, we all knew you as DJs and as producers. What was it like to present yourself as a band? Was it scary, or did it feel
terrifying?
natural?
Yeah, it was.
It was his idea.
I want to talk more about that as well.
It's interesting because I can still remember the first time that we walked out onto the stage, having rehearsed for a long. I mean, the rehearsals were a lot of fun. Actually, in some ways, when you're in a band, the rehearsals are the most fun because there's no pressure. You're with your mates. You're doing these songs. You're learning the songs, and it's just really nice to be making music with other people. Then to have to try and do it perfectly in front of people, of course, there is the pressure of performance. But very quickly, what was great about the acoustic shows that we were so close to the audience. I mean, the closest people were as close as the sound guy down there. And obviously they knew the songs, they were presented in a new way. So there was this lovely moment when they realized, oh, it's Miracle. And then the pleasure on their face just made it a lot easier to play. It was a very nice kind of feedback loop you got from the audience. And so 20 minutes in, the nerves are gone, and it was just incredible enjoyment all round, and seeing people singing along. We filmed the last couple of shows. We were kind of building up to that, but the first couple of shows we had lots of sing-along moments, and it was just great to be able to be a small part of this incredible band. I mean, there were 15 people on stage doing your little bit, but you could still hear. That's the other thing for me about this great thing about being in a band is you're just one part. You can still enjoy the drummer, and I can still enjoy Jono's, Rhodes piano, or Paavo's piano, or the harp, or the strings. I'm just doing this little clicky guitar bit, But you feel part of this incredible sound that's coming out, and that's very enjoyable for me.
What were your thoughts when Tony came up with the idea, or when he presented the idea?
Well, I was kind of frightened because actually you know, it felt like we were putting ourselves in the arena of bands, and there are plenty of good bands out there. But at the same time, you know, looking back, it was a good decision because, you know, the thing turned out really well. It was something that no one had really done quite like that from our arena, I think. And it kind of presented the songs in a different light, and I think it opened us up to a different audience as well, to some degree. I think it was a real success, yeah.
Yeah, because what you mentioned, the songs were presented in a different light, but the whole album itself could stand tall as itself. It wasn't a cover album or something of EDM tracks or it was a real beautiful album. That
was really important to us, that it didn't sound like some kind of really naff sort of, you know, elevator version of EDM hits or something. Well, EDM hits, you know, our own songs. But you know, it would sound. It was important to us that it would sound, like you said, it would stand on its own feet as a body of work, and that's really, really important to us. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of the credit for that can be directed at Bob Bradley. He was the musical director and producer of the album. And I think what Bob has, I've known Bob for a long time. I was in a band with him before, Above and Beyond. And he's developed this sound which we kind of borrowed a lot of Bob's sound palette for that. There's a kind of James Bondy kind of thing, Angelo Badalamenti, strings from particular bands. He's a big fan of the kind of Bristol trip hop scene. So there were the palette, if you like, of that band was partly inspired by Bob. So that made it easier in a way for us to concentrate on the bits within, because we had that more limited palette. I think we're going to expand it. If we do it again, we're going to probably add some little elements to it. But I think hopefully the two albums, if we do another one, will sound like the same band doing another album. So.
As a trio, how do you guys complete each other as friends? You are friends, right?
How do we complete each other? I mean, I think, you know, we all cover different bases, but we all cover slightly similar areas as well. It's like 3 circles overlapping, so, you know, there's gaps in, you know, each of our abilities. Like, you know, if we're going to tune a vocal, I can't be bothered to do that. Tony loves that, you know, he'll sit there for hours tuning a vocal. Whereas, you know, when it comes to sort of tweaking a mix, that might be more my area. So I think we sort of complement each other in, you know, different areas, I guess.
I think if you're making music, there are many ways of looking at a song and a track. And I think the thing that's been great about working with Jono and Parvo is that all 3 of us look at music slightly differently. For me, I'm really only interested in, you know, the bit you can whistle. And the complex nature of the mix is something that I can't really figure out, but Jono can. Jono can listen to a mix of music and kind of do this Fourier analysis of it and hear frequencies in there, whereas I'm just trying to figure out can you hear the words, or, you know.
Likewise, when he's writing lyrics, if he's, you know, he's got this line that makes, you know, poetic sense, or, you know, seems like a great line, if it doesn't sound right, if it doesn't scan right to my ears, and I'm not listening so much to the lyrics at that point, then, you know, I'll say so. So it's kind of like, yeah, as Tony said, we listen to it in a completely different way, I think.
Now, I'm about to let you guys go here, but I just have to ask you about the yoga set at Burning Man. What was your thoughts when you heard about the possibility to do it?
Well, I mean, Parvo, who's not here today, is a huge fan of yoga and does yoga every day. And they just started doing, I mean, Burning Man's obviously been going for a long time, and Robot Heart is probably arguably the coolest bit of Burning Man if you're into electronic music. And they just started this year doing these sunset yoga sets where they were inviting people to play some ambient music, and they had some very famous yogis from around America leading the session. So it was actually a very spectacular setting. You're on the playa there, the sun's going down. There were maybe 150 people with their yoga mats in various states of undress lying before us, and there we are on this rusty old bus playing some really beautiful music, and there's this soothing voice of this very famous American female yogi doing the session. And I must admit, I got pretty emotional during it, because some of the music that we were playing is stuff that we don't really get a chance to play out. And I remember we were playing a track from Andrew Bayer's last album, and the yogi just literally, she was mid-instruction, people's legs were just about to go up here, and she stopped and looked up at the DJ booth and just went, wow, as this bit of music happened. And it was really quite a magical thing, actually. And for us, it started a relationship with Robot Heart, which we hope will continue in the future, because I think they do something really interesting. They have this little bus that drives out into the middle of the playa, so it doesn't disturb anybody, and parties all night. And that's a really incredible thing to go and see. And hopefully next year we'll get a chance to DJ on out in the playa, as well as do another yoga set. But I think they were really surprised by how well their link to the SoundCloud of the set did. They were very surprised, but it was a really nice opportunity and really enjoyable to do.
It's a very, very beautiful set as well. What are you guys looking forward to over 2015?
Looking forward to starting work on some of the club mixes from the album, definitely, and a lot of the touring we're doing. We're starting a tour in LA at the Forum, which is a great venue. I think it's now sold out, isn't it, that gig?
Yes,
just about.
It is, yeah.
It's really exciting. We went to America probably now 11 years ago. I think we started 12 years ago even, maybe, and then seriously touring maybe 8 or 9 years ago. And we were on a bus traveling around often doing these shows, and there were small shows, and now on this tour most of the gigs are selling out, which is really exciting to see that kind of progress. So yeah, we're really excited about that tour. And then this tour's been great in Scandinavia. We don't come here very often, and just to have all these people following us on the plane, it's just been great, actually.
Yeah, there's 10 guys who went to Copenhagen and Oslo, and they arrived in Stockholm tonight. And there's a guy from New York actually who has come to all 3 shows as well. So
I think cool. Last year was all about finishing the album and doing lots of music. This year I want to do lots of music as well, but we are doing a lot of touring again this year with new music, so that's exciting, because it was getting to this stage where we played all our big tracks at the festivals, and it was time for some new material, and we were sort of storing up this massive vault of material, and now we can let it out again. So that's really exciting, really.
So 2015 is looking pretty good then.
Yeah, we kind of, I wouldn't say live each day to the next, but we don't know what's around the corner. Who knows what's going to happen? We sort of know what's going to happen this year roughly, in terms of our gig dates and things. But we don't have a major plan of our musical direction, let's say. We have an idea of which shows we're going to do. So that's what's exciting about it, to not know where you're going to go next. We know we'll do another acoustic thing in the future at some point. But yeah, it's the unknown that's the exciting bit.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us on.
My name is Victor Kidson, and we're in Stockholm with Bejbi.se. This is Above and Beyond.
Hey, do.
Hey, do. That's good.
Tack.
Thank you so much.
It is tack, isn't it?
Yeah, it's tack.